Kyle Hintz is back with me here. Kyle, let's talk about what we saw in the last film. Really interesting. I've never seen such an exploration into the path that bin Laden took after 9/11 and some of the behind the scenes going on with the ISI, etc.
Yeah, you would think they would have been a little more determined. I mean, after all, the president said wanted dead or alive, you know, and yet we documented time after time in which convoys of Taliban fighters and Al-Qaeda just were able to run through the desert and eventually took hiding in the mountains, and rather than cut off the avenue of escape into Pakistan, it was left wide open. This is even though CIA commanders on the field were calling back to the military and saying, we need reinforcements, bring them in. So they're getting calls back at headquarters in Washington, D.C., but they're a no-show. And as a result, bin Laden, who has been accused of being behind this heinous attack, is basically let free to run out of the Tora Bora Mountains into Pakistan, and we don't know what happened to him. You know, and now we're in this mess in Pakistan, and we feel that we're very prescient by spending as much focus as we did on Pakistan and the airlift. I mean, how many of you knew that there was this massive airlift with big U.S. military supplied planes flying into this airport at Kandahar, loading up with Taliban and others, and being flown out of the country into Pakistan, all under the nose of the U.S. military. Again, I mean, what is this about? I mean, there's so much we don't know. Again, we mostly pose questions, but there's so much we need to learn. And with shows like this aired on a station like KBDI, we might well get the answers. So with your support, we will.
Well, I think that everybody needs to start asking a lot more questions today, and we all deserve to know.
Yep. And what you're doing here tonight can grow. I mean, you're supporting a local activist group that is calling for a new investigation, that believes in accountability and transparency. The current president ran on transparency and accountability. Well, here we're taking a concrete step as a community, and you, with your support, are helping that happen. And this could lead to events. You know, there's a drive in New York City to secure 60,000 signatures in support of a petition that will get a ballot initiative on the ballot in November that will be voted on by the people of New York on whether to constitute a new investigation. Well, that's a project that needs support, even from Colorado, because we're all in this together.
Right.
9/11 happened to all of us. 9/11 happened to the whole world, and we deserve the truth. We deserve a full accounting of what happened. We didn't get that with the 9/11 Commission, and by airing this film, you're helping us, you know, move in that direction, and a lot more people are going to be asking questions and demanding answers.
Well, and whether people agree with the film or not, whether they agree with some of the information, you know, the fact that you're watching means that you're looking for information and that you support this kind of content on mainstream media. So if you've already called, thanks so much, and if you haven't called, there's still time right now. We've got more great guests here on our break, but really this break is about you. It's a time for you to become involved. So KBDI has managed our finances very well, and we're hoping that you'll make an investment in this strong, independent voice that's right here in your own backyard. Let's toss it on over to Rebecca and Bob.
Yes, the number to call to get involved in the dialogue is 1-800-690-KBDI, or you can go to our secure website, kbdi.org. Before the program even started, we had talked about how we wanted people who had comments in addition to their pledge of support to please use that comment section on the kbdi.org area of the website so that you can actually tell us your comments and tell us your feelings. Bob is with us again. Bob wants to talk a little bit more about what Kyle was talking about, which is getting together an investigation.
Right. I'm on the executive council. This is what Kyle was talking about. It's New York City Coalition of Accountability Now. And they need somebody. They have enough signatures to put it on the ballot in November.
Wow.
And if it goes through, if it's voted on in New York City, then we will have an independent commission in New York City with subpoena power. And that's a monumental thing, because that truly is...
Tell us the website to go to, Bob, on that one.
NewYorkCityCan.org? .org, right.
Sounds good. Thank you, Bob. And we're going
back
over to Sherry. Sherry.
Back at the phone bank with Earl Stalin. Earl is part of the 9/11 visibility group, and if you watched any of our broadcasts of Freedom to Fascism, then you probably saw Earl on. So Earl, can I tell, you're an attorney by trade, but you're a maniacal investigator on the side?
Sort of by accident. I hadn't expected to get into this, and it was only 3 years ago because I had accepted the official story. The section you just saw dealt with Pakistan's intelligence agency, and one of the central problems in tracking down any major crime is who's funding the criminal, who's funding the terrorist in this case. And there was very well documented evidence that $100,000 was wired to General Ahmad, the head of, by General Ahmad or on his authority, to Muhammad Atta within a week before 9/11. That should have been investigated, a very key part of the puzzle. It was not investigated by the 9/11 Commission, and they did not report those facts in the 9/11 Commission report. Major news media in the United States, in Europe, in Pakistan, and India all verified those facts, and the FBI showed that proof of Ahmad's involvement in this funding. And it had been known that the U.S. had a long connection with Pakistan's intelligence agency through the CIA. There was a major area that should have been investigated and was not.
I think that the whole section of the film that we just saw, really you need to watch it a couple of times to really absorb everything. But right now we're going to toss it back on over to Rebecca on the other side of the studio.
Thanks, Sherry. As I told many of the people here that I watched the film the first time with my daughter, who's 18 years old, and boy, she can get information off of the internet like nobody I've ever seen. The bottom line is I had more questions than I had when I started to watch the film, and I've now watched it beginning to end, first to last.
Hey, we're back on here. Earl and I were just talking about, you know, the film was produced in 2006, but the story is really continuing, and Earl has been doing a lot of independent investigation on his own and working with other people throughout the country, and we were talking about some new evidence around nanothermite. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Earl?
A peer-reviewed scientific journal called the Open Chemical Physics Journal a few months ago in 2009, a report by 9 scientists and technical people found extensive evidence of unexploded and exploded thermite, which is a very powerful explosive or incendiary, in 4 independently collected samples of World Trade Center dust from 4 different locations. And that was very shortly after the collapses, one within 10 minutes after the North Tower collapsed, 2 others a day later, and another within a week thereafter. Every one of them showed this evidence of thermite, the exploded thermite with microspheres of iron, and the unexploded showing what is been called nanothermite, very small chips that when ignited, thermite produces instantly temperatures of 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit, which is way higher than it takes to melt either steel or iron. And the evidence from that is very supportive of controlled demolition.
So more questions and more information. Earl, was there a great website to reference if people want more information on that specifically? Can they go to your website?
www.visibility911.com.
And we've got some other websites we'll be referencing as well. But right now we're going to toss it back on over to Rebecca and Bob.
Thanks, Sherry. Bob is with me. We're talking about how in other parts of the world, 9/11 is actually part of the conversation and part of the culture, isn't it, Bob?
Yeah, well, that's why I was so excited to come here from Philadelphia, just to talk about it. I don't get the opportunity to talk about 9/11 like this, but I've been around the world. I've been to Japan. I was in Rome, and I did another documentary, and the next day I was in a hotel, and they had 9 papers there full of 9/11 information. And then I went on a TV show that day, talked to all sorts of press. It's an open discussion. I've done interviews in Russia. I've been in Japan, and it's just so wonderful.
Talk to me about the reporter from Moscow coming up to you.
Well, actually, I was down in Ground Zero, and with my wife last year, a fellow walks up from Moscow. Oh, he had a real broken accent.
Right.
And he came up to shake my hands, and I said, "Where are you from?" He said, "I'm from Moscow. I saw your DVD." And it just makes me feel so good because we have difficulty in Russia, but to see that these things are happening in the world, and he just felt so good about it.
And you've been on national television in other countries.
Right, and it really makes you feel good to go around because they talk politics. This has to be talked about. It's not some vast conspiracy. Why did Tower 7 come down? Who bought all these put options? There's just so much to learn, yet people seem to be afraid to learn it. While all around the rest of the world, they want to learn it.
And they already know it.
And that's mind-boggling to me. It really is. That's why I give so much credit to this station for doing what they're doing, because it's my first time in America to talk like this.
This is amazing. Thank you, Bob. And remember, you can be part of the discussion as well at 1-800-690-KBDI or KBDI.org.